How's it going, everyone? It's your man Lost Disciple, the voice box of the underground of YouTube. And you may have heard over the last couple of days, Logan Paul and his ex-friend George Janko have been kind of having a little bit of a heated debate over on Twitter and TikTok. And basically, I'm gonna just try to sum up everything that's been going on in detail, because I actually got the full scoop this time before recording. Usually I get the full scoop before recording, but I'm gonna try to be a little bit more organized and try to go into a chronological order, since I never really addressed the whole George Janko situation before Logan Paul even responded back to what George had to say. I'm kind of glad I waited, because I got a little bit more of the full story so I can give a better opinion versus just hearing only George's side and giving my opinion on that. So I'm just glad I got to hear both sides, get presented with the facts of both stories, and just go off of what they're. So first, we're gonna start off with the George, because he was the first one to really talk about it. So he had a podcast episode with Mike, which was another co-host on the Impulsive podcast alongside George. And I guess he was over there, and they basically were just talking about, why George left, how he was feeling, and just going over the bad blood between him and Logan. And George basically he explains that though it was a lot of things that Logan was doing, and it kind of all added up to a tipping point to where George basically just was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm leaving. And that thing that finally pushed him over the edge was the Impulsive episode with Bobby Lee. For those of you that don't know who Bobby Lee is, he's basically an Asian comedian. I believe he might have been in a couple movies before. He does look very familiar. I've seen him around. I know he has his own podcast. I'm pretty sure everybody has a fucking podcast nowadays. I remember when I had a podcast years ago, before podcasts were popping on YouTube. I had a podcast back in 2012, no bullshit. But yeah, no. And what had happened on this podcast with Bobby Lee is basically Logan and Mike were basically egging on Bobby Lee to just shit on George almost the entire time.
He is clocked out.
Yeah,
I know.
George has been under a tremendous amount of abuse.
No.
No, stop, George. I want you over here with me. George, I want you over here with me. Chase him down. Go. You find him. George, no, go get him. Go get him. I said this, he walked, and that's a first. And now we're going to have to deal with the fallout of this episode for the next 2 months. I swear to God, Bobby Lee, you pissed off my co-host. He's probably crying in the driveway.
The Beatles could have lost Ringo.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Shout out to the Miman.
Okay.
Yeah, but we just took.
If Ringo left, they would be like, oh, let's shoot fucking Abbey Road, record Abbey Road.
We just shot a new profile picture.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying is that
we need him.
That attitude right there was just unprofessional.
It was a bit unprofessional.
It was unprofessional.
Yeah, it was.
Listen, I'm a guest, right? I feel hurt and abandoned.
I know.
I feel rejected.
Me too.
And this was fucked up, bro. All right. So if he doesn't come, because I got to go now.
No,
I know.
If he doesn't come back here, if he doesn't come back here by the time I'm done,
I'm walking too.
No, get him.
What the fuck?
No, you get him. I'll keep the conversation. Yeah.
From George's perspective, basically Bobby always had his back turned towards him. He never really acknowledged him in any of the conversations that they were having on the podcast. And the only times he ever actually interacted with George was basically to sexually harass him. And I don't mean sexual harassing comments or your dick's small or this and that, something degrading, but physical sexual harassment. And it goes more than just the rubbing or the touching on the thigh and making him uncomfortable. From what George was saying, Bobby Lee was just full on grabbing his schmeat. He was just gripping that boy like he was about to give him the finest hand job of 2024. And it just made him uncomfortable. And he didn't do it just one time. Apparently this happened more than once.
Yeah. Okay, the Bobby Lee situation.
Who was the first person that jumped off the couch and said, George just left, that was not good, we have to fix the situation?
But did they not cut shit that you should have stood up for me and said, hey, you can't cut that shit. That's gonna make him look like an idiot for leaving.
Okay, let's slow down, and I'll answer that. We have always cut things that we believe will protect the integrity or reputation of the guest.
That protected nobody but him.
No, of the guest. That's what I'm trying.
Well, what about the guy that you break bread with, bro?
But we removed.
Well, they do break bread.
A number of things that you said on the podcast.
Name one.
Well, no, I'm not going. I'm not
eat
going to.
booty, bro.
No,
Never
no.
once.
Do you want me to?
Name
There was
one.
something that you said on the laser beam episode. You said something about like laughing at a girl getting hit in like a parking lot. You saw like a
Oh,
fight.
yeah, I just said the joke wrong.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I didn't sexually harass somebody, man.
I'm not. Listen, I'm not trying to die 1-to-1. I'm just saying we.
And then the whole world thinks that I walked away because I can't take a joke. That's fucked, bro.
Well,
that's fucked.
It parlayed into more stuff happening down the line. Like it just became at that point. You saw me. I went on Bobby's show.
Yeah,
right.
And they cut around it. You said that.
Well, I have no control over that.
I try to make peace with this guy.
I know.
You've seen me.
Yeah.
I've tried to make peace with him behind closed doors. I try to reach out. I try to be cool. But by the way, and I'll just say this. We'll just empty it out. I never had a problem with Bobby Lee.
No, he knows that.
I had a problem with the way that Logan and you were kind of gassing him to keep doing. He started the episode putting his balls in my face. I let that one go. Then every 2 seconds, he kept grabbing my dick.
I don't think...
How would you feel if a man that has his back completely towards you, that only turns around to grab your dick,
right,
talk shit to your face, and you can't smack or beat the living brakes off of this guy? Because Logan makes me apologize to this man, or I don't have a job on Impulsive anymore. How fucking crazy is that?
I don't think I understood. I can only speak for myself.
Bro, it's
I
not
hope
a group chat.
I hope you can understand
it's not a group
that.
Chat.
No. I'm talking about during the episode because there was I didn't know that you were feeling.
But after the episode, do you remember when you called me? And I said, Mike, this is all that happens. And you said verbatim, you said, it's our fault for not telling you this, but me and Logan are really the ones who should be talking to the guest. You are really there for a boys only episode. So while I get sexually harassed, my other co-host is trying to fire me, and you're trying to leverage me to be quiet during other guests. And then on my birthday, you guys shot 3 episodes, so I couldn't show up.
I think it's honestly kind of ridiculous. I don't even know how George even let that slide for the fucking first time. I mean, to be disrespected, that's not even like disrespect at that point, especially for it to be recorded. That's just basically humiliating that person. And you know, George brought it up how that really, really bothered him, and nobody said anything about it. And apparently, you know, not only did Logan basically have his editors edit out the parts where George was being sexually harassed, so that, you know, that way it wasn't in the video, but apparently Logan, Mike, and a couple of the other guys behind the scenes had planned that, you know what, George should really only be there just for another body in terms of just looking there for the camera, and that he really shouldn't be the one to interact too much with the guest, as that's really Logan and Mike's job. George is just a guy in the background, almost like an extra in a movie scene. And you know, when George found this out, he was kind of like, dude, like, what the fuck? So like, not only am I like basically, you know, almost, because apparently, you know, he was almost on the verge of losing his job or whatever, getting fired, but now he's you know, his friends are basically telling him like, dude, like, you can't really speak too much, you got to be quiet. It was just a lot, and it kind of just got to the point where George was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm leaving. He says that, you know, he wouldn't be surprised if his friends were kind of shitting on him, you know, when his podcast wasn't doing the best that it was, or, you know, when it first started, which is, you know, makes sense. And that they were kind of like preying on his downfall almost. And now that, you know, it got successful, especially with like the Andrew Tate podcast, that's where I really heard of George Janko, realistically, is when Andrew Tate went over there. Now that it's actually got like its own, like, you know, platform, you know, that he has, that they kind of like are, you know what, now we have no choice but to kind of publicly address the situation because George is going to talk about it now that he has a platform to do so. So George also goes on saying how he put $10,000 of his own money into the podcast, how he was never paid, or he wasn't paid enough, you know, for the work that he put in on the podcast. And his friend Mike is trying to like, you know, like, dude, you're bullshit, and you know, that didn't happen. You did get paid. You got paid an X amount of money, but George ended up bleeping it out so nobody heard what he said. And that, you know, George claims that he got fired and no one reached out to him. It was a lot of shit that he just kind of spilled the beans on. And was just basically kind of just shitting on Logan Paul and his, you know, his old friends. It was like, dude, you guys are just pieces of shit. And that even they harass Mike, and that eventually Mike is just kind of backing them up until the point where he reaches, you know, the tipping point that George got to. And then he'll realize that all that shit was just bullshit. And that, you know, he just doesn't know. He just doesn't understand it yet because he's just not there yet, is basically what George was saying to Mike.
My 30th birthday, you shot 3 episodes. Bro.
I think
that's crazy. It was on the calendar for months.
I think by the time we got there, there was so much like confusion and disarray in the podcast that there was no coming back.
And this is just us just talking about. I'm not trying to be upset. I'm trying to work with you and like grow. But if I got a deal, because I started my podcast because I saw you guys.
Don't go there because you're gonna move on to a different topic. I want to button this one up.
No, it's the same thing.
No, I know, but just hold on. Whenever you called me with a problem with a hotel room, a problem with a flight, a problem with a coworker, a problem with Logan, a problem with anyone.
Yeah.
I always answered the phone.
Yeah.
I always talked to you. I always worked through it. I always called whoever the fuck was causing the problem and said, George has a problem with X, Y, and Z.
I never said you did.
I was there with you when we negotiated the deal for you to be part of the podcast. I applauded it. I was always had your interest in mind. The reason I was hurt was because I was always the one that was there. I was always the one standing up for you.
The last straw for me was, Mike, I had to escape. I had to leave for my own fear. When Logan came after me for my religion, the show hit rock bottom and we weren't getting paid. I was getting paid $5,000 a month, and that's covering just Reed. I have a mortgage. I have my sister that works for me. I have Belle. I'm trying to get married. I had all these things. So I had to start my own show because we're not making money on this show, and I'm getting pushed out of this show.
Well, at the time, we weren't making money. You made money on the show.
But at the time, we're a couple months.
How much money did you make over the course
I can show you my books. I was spending 10 G's a month being on the show.
Right.
When I got pushed out, and I'm seeing that I'm getting pushed out, and I start my own show, do you know what my final straw was?
What?
I got my show going, and then not only was I controlled and pushed around on impulsive, but then Logan's making calls and directing my show. And I'm saying, hey, man, you can't tell me what to do on my own show. That's not okay.
What's that about?
He told me that I couldn't take Celsius. And then I said, hey, man.
He didn't tell you that you couldn't take
text
Celsius.
messages.
That if you wait 6 months after the deal's done, you're more than welcome to rejoin the show if you need to make money.
But they're always trying to find a way to push me out.
I don't.
You know what he told me? And I told you know what I told. Hold on,
I think that was
this
a
is
fair.
A guy who's this is a guy who's sending us screenshots of $11 million a week that he's making. Okay, and on top of that, we never got any money from Prime, and we own that show. So technically, we should have gotten a percentage of that. I never asked for it like the way you did. I stayed the fuck out of it. I didn't care. I get that call, and I tell him, I go, Logan, I get it, bro. And I fully told him, I go, listen, man, like, I will take half the deal that Celsius gives me. Half. If you want to put it on the table for my show, a quarter, work with me. He says, I won't pay you a dime. You're here because of me. And then I said, well, what do you want me to do for my bills, bro? I got no money. And he says, go have your rich dad pay for it.
Listen,
That'll bring up somebody's father.
Would you say that the way that you handled it from a word standpoint was mature, acceptable?
What did I say? That I beat the fucking brakes off of him?
Correct.
If he was in front of me, I would have swung at him.
But that's what I'm trying to say. We were at a point where no one was speaking properly to each other. And the only person, and George, and the only person probably that was the calmest out of the three, I sent you a very nice text message. Please.
You went to Celsius to try to get my deal. Called me right after you called them. You never called to check in on me.
Do you know?
You never called to see.
I texted you.
No, you didn't. It was after you went after the deal.
And by the way, I wasn't going after the deal.
You did.
I was going after the contract to bring to Logan and say, beat this with Prime, please. I was never going to take the Celsius deal.
Listen, you can't. Okay, so I have one friend telling me to go have my rich.
We're just having a conversation. The one thing I am a little bit upset about was the text that you sent back to me. That's it.
I told you you're a piece of shit. Everyone knows it.
Yes.
You need to. But dude, I meant every word of it.
That's crazy.
No, I'm not.
That's crazy. That's insane.
If you fell out and you started doing scummy moves to your friend, I called you out on it.
But I didn't do anything.
Bro, you never checked. Not you, not Caleb, not Kevin, not Dylan. Nobody fucking called me when I got fired. Not one person called me. You know what I get a call from? Logan saying, at least Mike wouldn't do this. And an hour later, calls me and they say, hey, he's trying to get this deal.
But you know why I was trying to get the deal.
I get it. It's money. But why
No,
wouldn't you?
No, I was not taking the deal.
But why wouldn't you call me and talk to me before you try to go dig pockets?
You didn't want to talk to me. You did not want to talk to me. I was talking to Divish.
We never talked.
I was talking to Divish. I reached out to you. I definitely called you.
Never did.
I texted you. I have text messages that were not responded to. I definitely have text messages.
After I called you out.
I'm just saying I tried reaching out.
The fact that you would stand up for me on camera and then as soon as it cuts, being like, I'm gonna look so good that I stood up for you. There was intentions behind it, bro. You never cared.
Oh, so you're now saying that a joke.
I'm not the only one who thought that.
You're saying now that a joke that I made, which we would always tie comedy in with real life, a joke that I made after standing up for you a million times on a million fucking episodes, now completely discounts all of the times I did it.
Do you think what I went through was fair?
I think it's complex. I think it's complex. I think bro,
crazy, Mike. I wouldn't put my own enemies what I went through, bro.
I think I'm gonna be honest with you, or I'm gonna be honest with you. I think more than anything, it was a culture fit problem. I think there was a culture fit problem.
I think I brought a different type of look to the podcast.
I agree.
And
but
if you go look at the greatest hits on Impulsive, they were all flooded with my comments. And don't think I didn't see you guys take my name out and you guys shadow banned my name. Fans with screenshots shots of them trying to talk about me, and you guys were banned my name.
because we probably didn't want that conversation over fucking hauling the entirety of the show.
But also, it's like, bro, I walked away without saying a thing, and you guys were on the podcast saying this gets no views.
I said that?
When you guys talk together and you're clipped together, you guys, he's not talking to the wall, Mike. He's talking to you.
But
and you were like, and I know you were
I think that the execution of your treatment on the show, outside of the show, whatever, was perfect. Would be the biggest overstatement of all time. There was a million things, George, that could have been done differently. The conversation about Jesus was horrible, managed terribly. I'm with you on that. Okay, and by the way, so is Logan. He would admit that if he could have that conversation again, it would go completely different. You know that, bro. He didn't go into that with some sort of intent to harm. He clearly got carried away, was not seeing your side of the discussion, and it turned into a clusterfuck.
I just don't, not like I don't believe it, bro. It's just patterns. So you got to see the patterns. We'll use you as an example, bro. Like, I saw you go through hell over and over and over again. And guess what? It keeps happening. And it's the same thing that they put you through. I'm not going to mention what they put you through, but I watched, and I would pull you aside and be like, bro, that's fucked. Like, you shouldn't be talked to like that or acted like that. So for you to sit there and be like, oh, I know what you're going through, and then try to make it seem like what I'm saying is a little bit more fabricated, I think that's going to come back at you when the day that you finally snap and you're like, all right, I'm done with this shit. And then you're going to see it for what it is.
And then a few days later, Logan Paul makes a TikTok, basically just coming out with just straight receipts, airing out almost everything that was addressed by George. And he was basically saying, like, listen, we did pay. One, he starts out saying like he apologizes for about the Bobby Lee situation and what was going on the podcast. He never specifically mentioned anything about the sexual harassment, or more so just how they treated him with like during what was going on, how they just kind of like ignored him almost. But he never mentioned anything about how Bobby Lee was sexually harassing him. Or, the comments. Oh, yeah, it was the comments on his religion that really pissed off George, that made him walk off the set. So, like, he apologizes for making fun of his religion and stuff like that. And then he starts pulling out receipts. So then he starts talking about how they did end up paying him. They ended up paying him $312,000. He never put a dime into the fucking podcast. He actually ended up getting paid, like I said, $312,000 within the 15 months that he was there. He had, a good opportunity, a platform to, build himself off for his own thing. He got to network with a lot of people. And like Logan was basically saying, like, dude, I basically fucking gave you a career. I made you almost. One thing that Logan addresses that I actually didn't mention that George did mention was that George ended up actually getting a sponsorship with Celsius, which is a fucking competitor to Logan Paul's drink, Prime, because it's kind of like an energy sports drink sort of ordeal thing going on in the market. Fucking George ends up signing with, the Celsius sponsor.
All right, let's talk about this. Obviously, I wasn't on the podcast to represent myself, so I'd like to clarify a few things that were said. As well as having his own credit card, all expenses related to the show were paid for, including all travel and lodging. Obviously, George's total reimbursement came out to $20,000, 317 cents. I'd love to see any books that show otherwise. Spending $120,000 a year to be on a show is a little confusing.
This is a guy who's sending us screenshots of $11 million a week that he's making.
This statement is so crazy that it's almost laughable. That would mean I'm making $572 million a year. I'm nowhere near that. What happened was Prime had a very successful month. I think we did like 60 to 70 million, and I sent it to our group chat because I was proud of the business. I was stoked to show the boys, and I think George maybe misinterpreted that as like my personal income.
The show hit rock bottom, and we weren't getting paid. I was getting paid $5,000 a month.
But you did make a sizable amount of money on the show.
And by the way, always grateful. I was always grateful.
Like that?
Yeah, I don't like to talk about money.
I know he doesn't want to talk money. I know he believes it out, but George made $317,000 in the 15 months that he got paid for on Impulsive. The work requirements consisted of about 3 days a month, 3 hours each day, traveling the world, networking, and meeting some of the coolest people ever. It comes out to about $2,300 per hour, and he also had 10% equity of the entire show.
Not you, not Caleb, not Kevin, not Dylan. Nobody fucking called me when I got fired.
George did not get fired. He quit. I'll touch on that in a second. But after he quit, I called him frequently. I reached out. I wanted to reconcile the friendship. I invited him to my birthday party and WrestleMania and even my ranch a few weeks later. He chose not to come. He also unfollowed all the people he mentioned on Instagram, which is maybe why they didn't call him. I don't know. I can't speak for them, but he still does not follow them to this day.
And then on my birthday, you guys shot 3 episodes, so I couldn't show up.
The 2 episodes he's talking about, not 3, were shot 4 days after George's birthday. His birthday's on January 3rd. We shot those episodes on January 7th. We were already in Vegas signing the UFC to Prime, and as we do, want to capitalize on the location and our use of time and energy and the guests in that city. George didn't come to work because he wanted to spend time with his family for his belated birthday, which I totally understand and we even praised.
One of the things that I love about George, he prioritizes his family and friends over anything.
I got my show going, and then not only was I controlled and pushed around on Impulsive, but then Logan's making calls and directing my show. He told me that I couldn't take Celsius.
So this is the big one. Making calls, trying to make it seem like I wanted to control his show is absolutely ridiculous. As you can see right here, I was like, hey, we got to get you Prime because I saw him drinking our competitor, and he told me to call him. He was filming my reaction to tell me he took a deal with a competitor. I told him, please don't film. Like, I'd like to talk about this. I hope you're joking, by the way. The truth is, I thought it was a bad look that my best friend and co-host took a brand deal with our competitor without consulting me, asking me, giving us even a chance to match it before he signed the deal, because the audience that he's building, at least at the time, on his own podcast was being funneled directly from the podcast that I was building with him. I said, hey, dude, I understand you need to make money. The entire text is right here that I sent him after our conversation, because I did understand his position if he needed to make money, but I thought it was also a little odd because he did make $317,000 in 15 months. Regardless, I did tell him I can't have him on Impulsive if he's going to take the deal with the competitor, but if after he makes the money he wants to come back to the podcast, he's more than welcome.
Hey man, where you're at, there's no room for you to grow. They won't let you grow. They will not let you grow.
I thought saying that to Mike was a little crazy. He's grown a lot. He has 2.7 million subscribers since we met. He's a multimillionaire, a best-selling author. I tried as much as I could to help him get into those positions, and it's not entirely because of me. Mike is a phenom in his own right, and he capitalized on the platform that I gave him, which is awesome. Just like George is doing now, but if that's not growth, like what is? In fact, I think people forget, like, I praised George for starting a podcast like a lot.
Georgie started his own podcast. I think it's a great idea. I always love when my co-hosts venture out and do their own things. Congratulations. It's awesome, guys. Check out his podcast.
And also saying they won't let you grow was a little hurtful because I thought at least I helped Mike do some of the things that he did, and I even encouraged him to start his own podcast.
I think you should take a page out of Georgie's book and start a show of your own.
There's no greater feeling than watching people you love succeed. I tried to give people around me a platform, and if they capitalize on it, fantastic. Mike and George did. And George will even tell you this off camera. I encouraged him to pursue media and comedy since 2015. I really believe in the kid, and I still do. There's a lot more. I'm not going to get into it, but this isn't to say, by the way, that I didn't fuck up along the way. I did. I should not have mocked his beliefs. I apologize for that. I should have stuck up for him with Bobby Lee, and I definitely should have had his back more like a friend. There's a lot of things I would have done differently, but here we are. It saddens me that our story has unfolded this way. I wish him nothing but health, wealth, happiness, all the success that he wants, and I hope that one day we can sit down and have a relationship.
As fucked up as it does sound, George is within his right to accept whatever sponsorships that he wants, and he has to deal with the repercussions that come with it, especially when you side with one of your ex-friends or friends' competitors in a business space. Logan just came with receipt after receipt and basically was just like, dude, you're full of shit, and you're just basically a crybaby looking for extra attention, and that, you know what, you're just not gonna work because I got shit saved. Realistically, I gotta give it to, I think both of them are kind of like, I don't know, I'm in the middle on this one, only because I can understand George 100% on the whole fucking Bobby Lee podcast thing. And even though I don't agree with Christianity and all that other stuff, if he felt disrespected, then he's well within his right to get the fuck up and leave the situation in which he feels disrespected, and you can't really take that away from anyone. But at the same time, I do understand where Logan's coming from by him trying to stretch on some of the details, especially the part where he says that he never actually, got fired. He ended up quitting. How true is that? I have no idea. I wasn't actually there to witness all these events unfold. But it does just seem like it's a classic case of he said, she said, between friends that eventually drift apart, and when they had one creative idea that they worked together on, and then they eventually start drifting apart and doing their own things, and obstacles and barriers start popping up, people start working with enemies, and shit just gets ugly, the waters get all muddy. Let me know what you guys think. Who do you think is right? Do you think George is right? Do you think Logan is right? I mean, I know a lot of people don't like Logan Paul, especially after the whole Japan hanging body thing. And, overall his just stupid shit that he does. Some people just don't like the way he looks. And I understand that. Sometimes you see someone and you're just like, dude, I don't fucking like that person, and I never spoken a word to him. I just don't like the way they look. Just let me know. Sometimes you don't have to like that person, but you still got to go with the facts and giving that person like, you know, the dub or the win that they deserve. Let me know what you guys think. Like I said, leave a like if you liked, dislike if you dislike it. Leave a comment. I love to read them. As always, it's your man, Lost Disciple, the voice box of the underground YouTube, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out.